Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on this Saturday night, the 12th of October, which is the traditional Columbus Day 2019. Hope everybody's having a wonderful start to the holiday weekend. Monday, a federal holiday, and I'm still off until next Wednesday, so that's a good thing. Just want to wish Scott Briller and Scott Briller's mom, especially, all the best. As uh, Scott said that she wasn't doing too well today, and just want to pass that along. So the chairman is always missed on these live streams. So hopefully everything will get better, and he'll be back tomorrow. And I just want to wish the best to my friend John, who is still in the hospital recovering from his surgery. So hopefully he will be out soon. And we are now going to move along with respect to the weather. It's nice to see some of the usual here tonight, and also a few that aren't usually here but pop in every once in a while. I see Gregory Corriga is on, so nice to see you on board, Greg. We are also seeing Chuck Cardillo, who apparently was having a lot of electrical issues this morning, Chuck, from what you told me. Robert Hurley on, Javon Perry, Robert Brown, Mark Glatfelter, and Jason Schaefer, and of course, Johnny Quest on board tonight. Tim Smart, our buddy from up in Maine, and Chris Alley. So we got a nice, and Charlie Baker, Jess Harden. Quick hellos to everybody. If I missed you, if I left you out, there we go. Martha Sandwald just joined in. I think you're new, Martha. Nice to see you. Nice and welcome to my YouTube channel. Thanks for being here. For those of you who are new to the YouTube channel, the Joe Chaffee Weather Show, we're on almost every night. I do occasionally take a night or two off. And do subscribe to my YouTube channel, so this way you get notifications when the live streams come on. And of course, there's Weather in 5 in the morning. That is a pre-tape, but at least it gets you going to start your day as we look at the day's weather developments. And a couple of things going on today in what has now become an overall quiet weather situation across the U.S., and that is we have uh, subtropical storm Melissa has become tropical storm Melissa now that it has moved away from the East Coast. And the good news is, and I think Chris Alley, you should be able to confirm this for me, that the tide this morning was not quite as bad as the one last night. And the tides that follow should be better. But just bear in mind, there is a full moon on tomorrow. So we're seeing the tide heights going up into early next week into the peak high tide, which is, I didn't look specifically. It's either Monday or early Tuesday. But at least you won't have the water being pushed westward by an offshore tropical or subtropical storm or the onshore flow. So let's get rolling here. We do have one system this week that is going to be important. That's going to change a few things around with regards to the weather during this week. Looks like we may wind up with a rather wrapped up storm heading up eventually into eastern Canada, and that is going to bring down some cooler air for the second half. There's not a whole lot else going on. The blizzard in the northern plains is winding down, and if you look on the latest surface map, we'll see maybe the 21Z is out now, and you can see you still have low pressure, but it's past its peak intensity, sitting right there up in International Falls, and you're getting this broad flow of that counterclockwise circulation. So you're bringing down temperatures in the 30s across the Dakotas and through Minnesota and Wisconsin. This is not exceptionally cold air, but certainly for this time of year was enough to produce a couple of feet of snow in locations, especially up in North Dakota. And on the far right, you see Tropical Storm Melissa on the plot, now out at about 65 west. The last isobar of Melissa is touching Cape Cod. So at least as far as the coast is concerned, we're kind of in a bit of a no man's land here in between Melissa to the east, high pressure that is down in Kentucky, which is going to try to build in tomorrow, and this very weak cold front that is swinging around from that low that's back through Minnesota. The support with this is very minimal. So other than clouds, we're really not seeing all that much. Now here's the satellite loop from this afternoon. I'm going to freshen it up in a minute, but I just want you to notice that as far as where Melissa is, you're seeing that they're actually the development of a bit of a core as far as thunderstorms are concerned, right around the circulation center. So it made its gradual transition. You got to remember, it's south of 40 degrees north. The water temperatures out here are still pretty warm. So the fact that this transitioned over from non-tropical to subtropical and now to tropical isn't really a big surprise. And we'll get the new loop here loaded and see what it tells us as far as the core is concerned. And yeah, it's still pretty much intact. When it goes to the IR, when it's done, you'll see that there's a little blow up of thunderstorms there right near the circulation center. And of course, what happened in between the cold front to the west and the back of the circulation, the lower clouds are sitting out in the Atlantic. We actually cleared out in some places, at least briefly, from southern New England down to parts of eastern New Jersey, down to the Delaware, Maryland. Now we've got these clouds rolling, and then behind that, skies are fairly clear across Pennsylvania and through Ohio. So at least from the standpoint of this front moving east, it's not going to really be doing very much at all. It goes by and then we're done. And actually, if you look at the water vapor imagery, you see the core that's with Melissa way out to the east, the dry air that is coming through the Ohio Valley and points westward. And of course, you've got the clouds that have been pushed out offshore to the east of the coast. I'm going to swing over to the continental U.S. Why don't we try that? We'll get the whole U.S. water vapor here and see what that's telling us with regards to the system out further west. And here we'll let it load, put a few extra loops on, a few extra frames of pictures. And look at that big circulation there sitting up right along the Canadian border in northern Minnesota. It really isn't moving very much at all. And the flow, very broad, almost like a bowl here with the counterclockwise circulation at the mid-levels of the atmosphere and a lot of dry air that is out to the west of the coast. So I think we're going to be in fairly good shape for tomorrow. Now, there's a little bit of moisture that's shooting up through Texas, and we're probably going to see because of the fact that this upper low is kind of taking its time moving eastward, that the front that is coming through is going to stall out and it will find itself. Let me make this a little smaller. There we go. The front is going to stall out right along. Got to use a color that you guys can see better. Not used to doing broadcasts on Saturday night, folks. But this front's just going to kind of stall out, and you're going to get a little wave that's going to develop, hardly noticeable, and it's going to run right along this boundary. And that will probably take a small area of rain on Sunday through parts of the southeast and on up into maybe southeastern Virginia, eastern North Carolina. And then it should pass mostly to the east of the Delaware coast and pass south and east of New Jersey and southern New England. And then we're going to get into that drier air that is lying to the west without any eastward progression here, at least for now. There's this sort of temporary hiccup. So we'll get this weak wave to go by Sunday night. For the vast majority of the folks in the Northeast, you won't see a drop of rain out of this. So it's just more of a nuisance than anything else with respect to Sunday. Probably sunshine and clouds in the mix, maybe more clouds as you go through the latter part of the day. And you can see Melissa's kind of trapped inside mid-level dry air that surrounds it. That's a pretty interesting view there on the upper right with regards to Melissa. Now, in my neck of the woods, we'll see what the plots are. And of course, temperatures did recover back into the 60s today. The surface winds are all light, north or northwesterly, or even west northwesterly in some places. You're still getting more of a north or even a north-northeast wind out at Cape Cod, but nothing too windy here. Nantucket is 18, gusting to 25. And the buoy that's out to the east is 18 with gusts up to 22. So, this is really from the standpoint of wind, wound up not being that big a deal because of the fact that Melissa was so far out to the east, never really getting to the left of 70. And as I mentioned last night, and I'll say it again, you have to be really careful when you look at weather models, especially the further out you go. You didn't even, in this situation, we really weren't looking that far out. We were inside 60 hours and for the most part, inside 60 hours, having models taking this to about 71, 71 and a half west. One of them might have even taken it as far as 72 and change, but it never got anywhere close. It never got left of 70. It does at least support the notion, though, had it gone that far west, the coastal flooding would, considering that it was moderate to even a few spots getting some major coastal flooding out of this, if this system had pinned itself back west of the coast, there probably would have been some very serious coastal flooding up and down the New Jersey coast and throughout southern New England and even down through Delaware and into the Delmarva Peninsula and Chesapeake Bay. But fortunately, that did not occur. So the precip is not a whole lot of it going on. You saw on the water vapor, look at the radar, the outline of the radar echoes running. Just look at how perfect that little jet streak is. A perfect half circle there from North Dakota to northern Iowa to southern Wisconsin and into the western lakes. I don't remember ever seeing something quite like this. And the upper low sitting probably very close to where the surface low is in northern Minnesota. So all that support so far west. The trailing cold front here is right. Change that color over to blue. Come on. There we go. Hang on a second here. So here's your trailing cold front, and it loops all the way back into the upper low. So you're getting this drier air that's coming in just like this, down through the plains, swinging across the middle Mississippi Valley, and then on up into western Pennsylvania and western New York, and very few showers up in northeastern New York State. And if you look across the country, it's just pretty quiet. A little bit of shower activity that's going on in South Florida, down by the Keys. A couple of downpours there. A little bit of activity east of the Louisiana coast. Otherwise, I don't know if this is a loft or ground clutter. It looks a little suspicious to me. Otherwise, a little action in Texas and up in the Pacific Northwest, and that is it. It's as quiet a Saturday, I think, as you could possibly see. So I want to just spend a little time with respect to the upper air and the overall pattern. And of course, the upper low in the east, that was Melissa, now getting kicked out to the northeast. Up until right through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, just kind of being held in place. Remember, we had that low that was out in the Atlantic that the Hurricane Center was watching. It never really did develop into anything, but you had the surface high to the north. You had this low to the east of what became subtropical storm Melissa and then tropical storm Melissa. So it was kind of locked in there. The upper air jet stream flow was not able to kick it out, and the system in the plains couldn't come eastward either. Now it's lifted up northward, and it just has opened up and given it the kick it needs to send it on out to the northeast. So you see the change that occurs in the jet stream pattern over the last 48 hours. So you're starting to get a broader westerly flow across much of the United States. Here's your upper low here. You got an upper low that is sitting south of the Aleutians into the trough that goes down, not quite down as far as I've drawn it because there's an upper high sitting north of Hawaii, but there's a weaker trough there that extends southward along the longitude of Hawaii near about 155 or 160. And by the way, there's a tropical storm that formed southwest of the westernmost islands of Hawaii, and that is moving away. I was kind of surprised to see it, but apparently it just sort of blew up overnight. The Hurricane Center wasn't really even talking about it. The Central Pacific Hurricane Center that I saw over the last couple of days really didn't mention very much, and then suddenly they had a tropical storm there. but that's moving away. And in the meantime, you'll watch what's going to be happening this week as we have a shortwave trough that's coming into the west. And our upper low that's over Minnesota now goes into Labrador. So what happens? This next trough is going to dig a bit. It drops southeastward and just kind of swings around that upper low that's over in Labrador. And that's going to strengthen as it moves towards the east coast. And I think what you're going to see is probably a fairly strong storm that's going to develop when it reaches up into the Gulf of Maine. The pieces are going to be coming together along the east coast. You're going to have, in a situation like this with a digging trough, you wind up getting, this sort of west-southwest flow of warmer air, especially aloft, that's going to be pushing up the east coast, and you've got some fairly chilly air that's coming down on the backside of this shortwave trough. And the origin of that air is up from northern Canada. So for this time of year, it's fairly cold. It's coming down. It's going to energize. This trough's going to swing around and energize a surface low along the east coast, but it doesn't really strengthen until it goes by New Jersey and southern New England. And at that point, you're going to see pressures falling fairly rapidly. So it's a rain event for most. And maybe in parts of northern Maine and on up into New Brunswick, you might eventually see a changeover to snow. That remains to be seen. But this is going to bring in some much cooler air later next week. And then while that's going on, here comes the next trough into the west. So when this system in the east lifts out, a ridge is going to try to build here in the eastern part of the United States for next weekend. The upper high is centered offshore, though. It's not centered down in this area or even further north than that. It's off the east coast. So this will be a warming trend next weekend ahead of what will probably be the next cold front from this system that is going to be swinging out from the northern plains. Pretty interesting weather pattern, really. And then that lifts up, and you get troughing here in the eastern part of the United States. Now we're beyond day 10 here at this point, so just that's the 12Z run. The longer range on the GFS wants to bring troughing back into the east and builds a big ridge up into the Gulf of Alaska. Okay, I'm sorry, up over Alaska. Some very strong upper high there. So this would certainly favor a much colder flow across North America if it were to verify. But as we all know, after about day 7 or 8, you got to be really suspicious of this stuff on the models because they tend to go all over the place. And in fact, I'm just jumping ahead to the 18Z and just to see if there's any kind of continuity here. And we'll just roll it back. We know what's going to happen this week. That seems fairly straightforward. There's your digging deep trough into the east. It cuts off rather nicely there over Vermont and New Hampshire, and then lifts up over New Brunswick and toward Newfoundland. Troughing comes into the west. Ridge builds in the east. As we said, it's off the southeast coast, so it's not going to be any kind of heat wave ridge. And then here comes another trough into the east. And I just noticed, at least on the 18Z, I have a scattered, I don't have it in sequence. After 220, 34 hours, it kind of jumps 100 hours to the next one. So let me just see if the US shot is a little more, has more continuity, which it does. So it's just for laughs. Now it wants to make a cutoff along the East Coast. Okay, dream on. And then going forward, I mean, kind of really just sort of a typical west to east progressive flow. I think that's what you're going to have to favor with regards to the longer term pattern, and just leave it at that. I don't think there's anything really substantial or potentially surprising at this point from what I'm gathering here on the latest run. So we'll take a look at the surface map, and of course, there's your high. It's a little hard to pick out that wave for tomorrow night. And you can see it brings a little bit of rain into parts of South and North Carolina, southeastern Virginia. Not a whole heck of a lot. then that goes out. Monday and Tuesday look great, but now we're starting to see low pressure that's developing in Oklahoma, and of course you've got another low with the upper feature that's swinging down from Canada that's there in part in Wisconsin. And you're going to maintain identity with that southern feature and the northern feature. So this is a fairly strong system here that is swinging into the east for Wednesday, bringing some rain and maybe even some heavy rain for some folks. Whenever you have a good push of chilly air coming down with the short wave, and you have a setup along the east coast where the flow goes southwest aloft and brings up a surge of warm tropical air, you're going to wind up seeing what could be maybe a widespread rainfall. I'm going to switch over to the radar view. I think that's always a better. Looking at the actual liquid precip amount map, it's a little deceptive because it makes you think it's raining in some places when it may already be over with. But you see how the GFS handles the rain for Sunday night. Runs fairly quickly through North Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, off the North Carolina coast, southeastern Virginia, well south and east of southern New England, and then out. There's your high building in. Now here comes your next system. Might be a little bit of snow in the mix up in North Dakota, considering how cold it is. And of course, they're going to be on the backside of that trough. And then as it moves toward the east coast and the trough begins to amplify, you're seeing the rain amplify as well. And actually, if you look here for Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, the GFS actually has some possible thunderstorms there in eastern Ohio, moving across Pennsylvania and in through upstate New York by Wednesday evening. The front is through, and now it's colder and drier behind it. The model's picking up on a little bit of snow up in just north of northernmost Maine over the St. Lawrence River. But I wouldn't be too shocked, given the dynamics here with the upper feature, that we might see a little bit more in the way of some snow showing up in northern New England as we get closer. And after that, there's not a whole lot happening here. There's that high off the East Coast for next weekend, and then we've got another front that approaches for early next week. And of course, this is where the model made this low, trying to cut off along the East Coast, which we have no clue whether that's going to be anything real or not. So yeah, it's a fairly straightforward mid-October pattern. As I said from the beginning, it's kind of quiet. There's nothing, outside of the fact that we had those two blizzards in the Plain States. The blizzard in the Plain States and the blizzard back in just in the northern Rockies, and then the second one, the snowstorm in the northern Rockies and Plains. Kind of anomalies in a normal October. You start to see maybe the occasional storm here and there, but we got to see two back to back. But now a bit more of a quiet scheme to go into this week until we get to Wednesday. And then after that, we'll see how the models handle this. The GFS keeps trying to show something tropical coming out from the Caribbean on this run. It moves it northward. I'm really suspect when it comes to what the models are doing with respect to the tropics. So this season, this has been a nice, refreshing change this season in that we did not really see models routinely and daily spin up Category 5 hurricanes all over the place. So that was nice not to see that. And in fact, when it did spin up storms much of the time, it would do it for a couple of runs and then they would disappear. The tropical weather outlook from the Hurricane Center from earlier hasn't really changed very much. Talking about a system we mentioned yesterday coming off the African coast, but this time of year, it's just it's climatologically unfavorable for storms to develop. But even if something were to form out of this, it's going to turn northwest and northward, and it might actually do it east of the Cabo Verde Islands anyway. So it really doesn't matter too much. And then as we look at that area in the Caribbean, and this is where the model was doing something for days and days and days. Now it's kind of lost it. Moves most of the energy out into the Pacific. Only a 20% chance of something developing, and the only way anything would develop is if any kind of low forms, it winds up staying over the water. But there's probably a high probability that it'll move over Central America and move out to the other side. Just kind of curious as to they do mention anything on the Pacific side. Well, see, they're kind of on the Pacific side. with what's out there now, this gyre of moisture and cloud cover on the satellite. So another disturbance comes off of Panama and then heads off the southwest coast of the southwest coast of Mexico and possibly develops. And they've got nothing there south of Acapulco. And then we've got this system that it's southeast of Baja, and this is probably going to become a tropical depression or a tropical storm in short order as it moves along toward the west northwest. So no real, there's nothing really in the tropics that I think we have to worry about. We're at the point now. We're almost to mid-October. Uh, the probability of tropical storm formation drops fairly sharply after around the 15th. So I think we're at the point now that if I'm going to say that we'll probably have one more named storm between now and the end of November, and chances are it would be either something that forms out in the Atlantic, in the subtropical Atlantic, or even on the northern fringe of the subtropical Atlantic where the water is still pretty warm, or maybe something winds up coming out from the Caribbean or the southwest Gulf of Mexico. I think that area would be where climatology would say we would wind up seeing something develop. So I'm going to join you on the chat board for a short time tonight because I'm not going to carry this live stream out to the hour. So give me 1 second. And for the late comers, we've got 50 folks here on a Saturday night. That's pretty cool. Saturday nights, everybody's kind of busy doing Saturday night type of things. Timothy Veltman, haven't seen you in a bit. Good to see you, buddy. And David Schwartz. It looks like Hagibis will recurve after it's done with Tokyo and end up affecting the jet stream. Well, yes, and I think what you're seeing is I'll pull up a map. Let's look at the map here. I'm going to bring up the North Pacific upper air. Let me just roll it back. Okay, so hang on 1 second. I will put the graphics back up on the board here. So hang on. There we go. So the typhoon, which I can continue to constantly mispronounce, that's the feature in the upper atmosphere that represents the typhoon. And I've rolled back, by the way, to Wednesday on this map here. And there it is, made its landfall over Japan today, across near Tokyo, and then gets ejected to the northeast. And you'll notice what it does with regards to the energy. It's energizing. You got this upper low that's creating the pathway, the recurvature, the jet stream pattern aloft that is turning it up to the northeast. That upper low strengthens as it moves eastward. So let's take a look at what happens. So follow that along. You see the typhoon kind of gets absorbed by it, and it's just about gone now when we head toward Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. And then that whole upper air feature moves over into the Bering Sea and stretches out over the Aleutians. Now, look at what's happening on the far right. And now we're into Tuesday. So with the strengthening upper low that eventually finds its way to the Aleutians in the Gulf of Alaska, what happens in the east? That trough that's coming down digs southeastward and deepens as it lifts up into northern New England. So that makes that makes complete sense. So actually, the typhoon is energizing the upper low that's in Northeast Asia that eventually swings out into the Bering Sea and finds its way across the Aleutians and into the Gulf of Alaska, and that creates a deep trough out off along the East Coast later this week. Now, it's a progressive pattern, so everything is moving along from west to east, so nothing really gets locked up there. So now here comes the next energy that moves into the middle part of the United States. And now we're into next week. This is on Tuesday, October 22nd, so a week after next, with a trough approaching the East Coast. And that all pretty much, that follows the pattern here. With no blocking, you're just continuing to see weather systems move along from west to east with troughs and ridges, and you get shots of chilly air. You warm up ahead of the next cold front, then the next shot of chilly air. It's a busy pattern, but it's a pattern where it's hard for it to stay too cold for too long. But it's very interesting how the recurving typhoon, everything's kind of locked in together in terms of how these systems interact with each other. The typhoon is recurving into an upper low that's already there, and in turn, the upper low gets energized to create impacts to systems that are further downstream. So the weather's it's as I've always described it, and I think it makes a lot of sense. It's like that old kids gearbox toy where they put the gears in the box and they get all of the puzzles solved, and there's a handle, and then they turn the middle gear and all the surrounding gears turn with it, and the kid laughs and smiles, and you've succeeded in at least keeping him occupied or her occupied for a short period of time so that you could get a little bit of peace. But in the world of weather, the only difference is that those gears are constantly morphing and changing and moving around. And that makes it quite a challenge when it comes to figuring out what the short, medium, and long-term implications are. Northeast Oklahoma, Erica Baker had her first frost, and of course that's coming on the heels of that big upper low and the snowstorm up in the northern plains, so no big surprise there. Johnny Quest, you heard the Mississippi River is still in flood stage in places. Isn't that very unusual for a river to be in flood stage for this long? The only thing I'll say that I haven't really looked at the details, but it seems that it's been raining quite a bit in the middle and upper Mississippi Valley for the last 6 or 7 or 8 weeks, and the rain has been substantial, and I guess that has kept water levels quite high. But I'm not 100% familiar with that, but I'm guessing the fact that the pattern's been very wet there through much of the summer and into this early part of fall, that it has impacted the river heights there. Marcio Brown, why is the West Coast don't get hit by hurricanes like the East Coast does? Well, for one thing, your water temperatures aren't warm enough. If you look at the water temperatures off the West Coast, they are actually cold almost year round. Water temperatures in San Francisco barely ever get above the low 50s. You get down toward LA, upper 60s to around 70. You get down to San Diego, ocean water temperatures there in the low 70s. That's not warm enough to support a tropical storm. Certainly, it's not warm enough for tropical storm formation. Every once in a while, you get something that comes out from off the west coast of Mexico, or it runs up the Baja Peninsula or up the Gulf of California, and you do occasionally wind up with rain getting into Southern California from these tropical systems, but that doesn't happen too often. And there have been cases on record of tropical systems that have held together as they've moved further north to a certain extent. But the Pacific, you're getting the current of the current off the Pacific coast runs down from Alaska and the Gulf of Alaska southward. So that water's cold. And you have to get really south of 25 degrees north to find ocean water temperatures that are at least up around 80 or so. And you really have to look almost south of 20 degrees north to find water temperatures on the Pacific side that are warm enough, and they are warm enough certainly to support tropical storms and hurricanes and major hurricanes, in fact. But much further north than that, the ocean water profile is just it's just not there. Let me see if I can. I'll try to see if I can find a graphic really fast. and we'll put it up. I'm trying to see if this might give us something. All right, well, this is as there's no legend here for the temperatures. So 27 is the dark red. What is this? No, this is weird. Okay, 421. Okay, so here we go. Let me bring this map up here. This is from seatemperatures.org, showing the Pacific Ocean. And okay, so you're gonna have to trust me on this. So the dark red on the legend, which they have all the way down here at the bottom, we actually could see the coast all the way down into South America. So that purple area, see, they got water temperatures here above 35 degrees. I mean, that's nuts. Okay, 35 degrees Celsius. I mean, those are water temperatures in the low. We're talking water temperatures what at about 93 or 4. That's not no. Maybe in the mid to upper 80s. So I'm doubting some of these numbers here, but they do have the darker red. Okay, the darkest red there is 27. So where you see the darker red, and even here, you know what? I'm not liking this map. I'm not liking that map at all. Hang on one second. I think those maps are just wrong. All right. Bear with me, folks. I'm going to put up Pacific sea surface temperature anomaly. This is what I want. This is much better. Pacific. Okay, so if you notice, those are the anomalies, by the way. We have below normal water temperatures there along the equator. So when you look at this, we do not see any El Nino here. I don't think you have enough here to indicate any kind of La Nina. So we remain El Nino. We remain, I believe, ENSO neutral. So let's bring up the actual water temperature. This is the anomaly chart. Oh boy. When I need to find these links, please bear with me. I appreciate your patience. Sea surface temperature. Let's try this again. Yay! Success, success, success. Okay, so let's look at the California coast. All right. Oh boy. Am I having trouble here? What's wrong with me today? California. All right. Here you go, Marco. So take a look. Finally got the right map up. I'm sorry for the delay. So look at the water temperatures down to San Diego. I mean, this is actually very chilly. Not even water temperatures are in the 60s all the way down south of San Diego. You have to go about halfway down to the Baja Peninsula to find water temperatures above 70. So none of this is supportive of tropical storm development. And if you have even at the height of the hurricane season, it's never quite that warm. And here is, I just brought up the equatorial view, and you can see this is all pretty cold water that's running up. Now again, the Antarctic current is bringing up colder waters up along the coast of South America and mixing it with the warmer waters that occur north of the equator. That water is actually cooled quite a bit down across the equatorial region. So this is where we're seeing those below average temperatures. So there's no El Nino here as far as I'm concerned, looking at these sea surface temperatures. And there's no La Nina yet. You would need a large area of below average temperatures along the equator going out. So that's not on the table either. The situation with regards to that is neutral at this point. Hey, Norm Roberts, nice to see you on board. Annie Ames of peak foliage in New Hampshire, my favorite state. I love New Hampshire. It is, in my view, New Hampshire is paradise. Okay, as I've always said, any place when you drive into the state, where the first thing you see is the state-run, almost tax-free liquor store, that works for me. I really don't think there's another chat room that's quite so polite, says Patricia Owens. Yeah, we're all a pretty well-behaved bunch in here. I find that, every once in a while somebody new shows up and tries to stir the pot, but the moderators that are on board here, I know Johnny Quest is all set ready to put people in timeout if they have to. So I think that pretty much wraps it up, folks. Robert Brown, usually along Washington's coast, it's around 55. Yeah, I mean it's mostly low 50s up that part of the California coast. Yeah, there's no way. Obviously, there's no way you're going to get any kind of tropical system much further north than 20, 25. Once they get north of 20 degrees north, you see how quickly they fall apart. I've seen Category 5 hurricanes approach 20 degrees north, and the next day when they're up at about 25, they're barely tropical storms, and then suddenly you have a remnant low. Peak foliage, gentle weather, woodchucks in the garden. What could be better? You want me to throw map out? Which map am I throwing out, Bill? Sometimes I'd like to throw them all out. Are we getting into a colder pattern for late October? I don't know. That's going to depend on a lot of things, Daniel. We after next week, next weekend we're probably going to be with the high offshore, so it'll warm up a bit. Nothing crazy. It'll just get warm ahead of the next cold front. Yeah, if the trough wants to drop into the eastern part of the United States toward the end of the month, then yeah, we'll probably see some much colder shots of air coming down the road. So that'll be a nice thing to look forward to if you want, if you want cold shots of air coming into the eastern part of the United States. Jared Akers, welcome aboard. Yes, it does look like at least when the system that's coming out through the plains and through the southern states should be a pretty good rainmaker. At least it's going to be far better than anything you've seen lately. So from that point alone, it'll be a plus. But it should be a pretty good rainmaker. And then as it swings up the East Coast, it's moving at a fairly good clip. So it's not going to have a whole lot of time to produce a ton of rain, but it will do something, which is a plus. Jason Barry, sometimes a tropical system, the remnants making it into Arizona or New Mexico. Yes, that does happen quite a bit. And you oftentimes see in Arizona in particular, you can get a flash flood warning up with about half or three quarters of an inch of rain because the ground sometimes is baked so dry it's like concrete, and every drop of rain that falls just runs off. But yes, tropical moisture does get into Arizona and New Mexico from time to time as remnants of tropical systems, and you wind up producing some fairly hefty rains. Would it be fair to say, asks Anthony Orr, one of our two resident statisticians here on the Joe Chaffee Weather Show, that Melissa was very likely a tropical storm in time for the 11 a.m. advisory this morning, even though NHC made it tropical at 5? Yeah, it's possible. Look, the thing is, in a situation like this, where the storm being tropical or subtropical really made no difference in terms of the overall weather outcome, um, uh, the fact that they could have done it 6 hours early is not a big deal. If there was going to be some sort of important weather ramification with regards to a system being non-tropical versus subtropical versus tropical, then that's a different story. But here, I mean, there was no harm in waiting until later in the afternoon to see if the core was going to hold for the entire day. I think that was probably the risk they were looking at, saying, okay, it looks like it's getting almost it's making a complete transition into a tropical storm, but maybe it's only going to last for a couple of hours and then fall apart. So why don't we wait to see if it holds on for 5 or 6 hours, and then we can go ahead and make it a tropical storm? But it doesn't really make any difference in terms of again, because of the practical weather. It didn't change anything. All right, so I think we'll call it a night. Oh my God, Frank Sinatra's on board. I'm flattered, Frank. Nice to see you. Star of from Here to Eternity, and The Man with the Golden Arm, among other movies that Mr. Sinatra had made, and also he was had a reputation for being quite the diva on the set, by the way. You're dying for the Angry Ben app to be on your phone. So I'm guessing, Daniel, that you have an iPhone. So for those of you who have not downloaded the Angry Ben weather app, the Angry Weatherman, it is available for Android devices. You can find that on Google Play. Just search the Angry Weatherman. And of course, if you haven't already, shame on you. But you should have downloaded my free app, which is good for both the Android and for iPhones. And if you want the links, by the way, to get those downloads, it's on this link that I just put on. Izzy D, who occasionally now frequents my neck of the woods on Long Island, was my brother's bought off him, cannot watch live streams on there due to its filter, also taking typing lessons on there, finally on the 12th. Okay, you're talking with Jason, so I can't see what the I can't really. Oh, you got a Chromebook. Oh, very good. Um, oh, Chuck, no problem. I was able to do it even though it was late. The live stream last night was a 10 o'clock live stream, so which is odd, rare for me. But that was with all the stuff that I had going on. I was able to get home in time and squeeze a live stream on. So I figured I'd give you a rare Saturday night live stream, and we'll leave it at that with the weather being quiet. We'll call it a night. Okay, so weather in 5 tomorrow morning. We'll see what happens tomorrow night. Probably we'll attempt a live stream sometime tomorrow evening after football is done, so stay tuned. And check out the latest posts will be up on the app or on the website. And that's it. So have a great rest of your Saturday evening. Go Yankees. William Huber, I agree with you on that one. Oh, Paul Roman just jumped on 61 up in Ulster County in upstate New York. And good to see you here, even though you've arrived late. And good night to you, Rosendo Benitez. By the way, any of you who have joined this live stream for the first time, please be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. This way you get notifications when live streams go on, which is almost but not quite every day. And also remember to make sure that your notifications are turned on if you have the YouTube app. Make sure the notifications are turned on there. Make sure notifications are turned on your phone, and don't log off YouTube, because if you log off, you won't get you won't be getting notifications. Okay, and of course, if you have my app, you will get notifications anyway. And if you're on Patreon, on my weather subscription weather platform, you get usually a 2-hour notification that there's going to be a live stream, so that you can join the chat, which always opens early. All right, enough. Have a great night. We will